hello to our fans. This is kind of a new thing that we're doing. It's kind of the show before the show. We're trying to do some new things here with YouTube, and we're very excited. So the show has not officially started yet. We're giving our guests an opportunity to post some things on Facebook, and we're giving ourselves the opportunity to post on Facebook. So before we begin the episode, Murph, you want to tell everyone how your day's going?
Ooh, that's a good question. My day is going pretty well. As we've talked about a little before, I'm a financial planner, so I've been communicating with clients a lot, and I'm heartened to say people are hanging in every way. Obviously the most important way being health and taking good care of themselves and their community and their families and stuff. So that's good, and it feels good when you kind of like coaching, when people feel good about what you're saying and trust you and stuff. So that's good. Then I took my dog out, which made me a little bit later to this podcast than I should have been. And I think it went pretty well, but we're training him for the last 3 weeks. His name is Nash. You'll hear me sometimes refer to him. And he's awesome in the house, but he wants to eat everything outside of the house. People, trains, squirrels, stuff like that. So, but we're working on it, and he's a good boy. So that's where I am. I'm excited to have our guests on tonight, to say the least. Are you excited?
Oh, I'm very excited. This is new territory for us, having guests. So I think we're about ready with our promotion here, Murph. Cool. We do have one viewer, so we are gonna. Looks like Facebook is getting ready to go here. And okay, Murph, you ready?
I am as ready as I'll ever be. Let's do it.
Okay. For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world at home via YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 4 of Murph and Sully's Youth Athletics Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mr. Ed Sullivan, also known as Sully, and I'm joined by
Dan Murphy, otherwise known as Murph.
That's right. For all you wondering at home, Murph is wide awake. We've given him coffee and some Sour Patch Kids to keep him going. And this broadcast started a little later than normal because it's almost bedtime for Murph. So
that's right.
But that's okay. So Murph, today's episode is officiating in today's youth athletics culture. Mm-hmm. Oh, Murph, you don't have the whistle already, do you?
I'm only going to use it when there's something to call. I'm just saying.
Well, Murph, I think at this time we should bring in our guest. Easy there. We should bring in our guest.
Yes.
We have Mr. Steve Riley, Bobby Adamo. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome,
How
guys.
we doing?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. We're excited.
So, we are fortunate enough, Murph and I, to know a lot of officials. And there's a lot of officials that, we could have asked to come on this show. But Bobby and Steve are two officials that always do it the right way. They're always hustling. They're always putting forth their best effort for the kids. They are there solely for the kids. They're not there for the money, and they're not there for the ego. So we figured that they were the two perfect individuals to come on today and talk about our topic. So Steve and Bobby, we're actually start off with Bobby. Bobby, how long have you been officiating?
It has been about 22 years now that I've been refereeing, believe it or not, yeah. Awesome. I started in the 1998-99 season.
Wow.
That's an important year. That was the NBA written lockout season. So
yeah.
You need to get
something to pass the time. So
Absolutely. Steve?
On and off for about 13 years, working for my current jobs. I had to take a little hiatus and just gotten back into it in the last 6 years.
Awesome.
Really enjoying it. And, again, like you said, it's all about the kids. We don't do it for the money. We do it for the kids, mentoring the kids and teaching the kids. So awesome. It's a great thing.
Absolutely. Before we continue asking questions, for those of you that are viewing this live, thank you. You can actually comment during the live stream, and if the comment is family appropriate and part of the topic, we'll actually post it live, like this one. Mike Pollock says they are there for the concessions.
Mike is just happens to be the manager, director, head chef of our concession stand, so that's why he said that.
Yep. So if we had virtual concessions, we would be dishing it out right now. But yeah, if you make comments during this live show and they relate to the topic, or if you have a question for Bobby or Steve, type it out and it may end up on the show. So Bobby and Steve, we'll start off this time with Steve. Steve, are you solely a basketball official, or do you officiate any other sports?
I am solely a basketball official now. I used to do high school baseball back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Excellent. Bobby, how about you?
For the last couple of years, I'm solely basketball. I've mostly been solely basketball for most of my career. The referees in one of my conferences were recruited for lacrosse a few years ago, and I did that for a couple springs. But at the end of a long basketball season, it was getting harder and harder to take those outdoor spring assignments, and I haven't done it the last 2 years. About 10 years ago, I took the football classes, but I ultimately decided not to referee football.
So did you guys, Sully, if you may?
Go for it, Murph.
Yeah. So tell us about your background in sports before officiating. What sports you played? What was your favorite kind of growing up? How that changed? All that kind of stuff.
I'll start there. So back in high school, played baseball and basketball, and graduated high school in 1987. Right out of there, came into the fire service, but also was teaching youth baseball in Downers Grove. Continued on all the way through to I was about 22 years old, taking on 13, 14, and 15-year-olds in baseball, and then got into coaching a little basketball. And as I started to have children, I took them on and coached them all the way from, age 6 all the way to age 15, and then let it go on from there. But again, it's all about teaching and mentoring these kids to try to make them a better athlete, to teach them what about life, and not just about winning and losing, but about having fun and continuing to build them up to make them get to their high school careers.
Very cool. What about you, Bobby?
Football, basketball, and baseball. I played growing up. Played football and baseball in high school. Graduated in 2000. Graduated in 1993. Ironically enough, I've probably played more basketball than anything in my life, but I didn't play that in high school. So then went to college, went to Benedictine, and when I was done with school, I started coaching at my old grammar school. I was a young coach. I was probably 21, I think, and I took a team all the way through, and then I took another team all the way through. About that time is when I started reffing. I started reffing. Actually, one of my assistant coaches got me involved in it. So that's how I started reffing. He was one of my youth referees, one of my favorite refs growing up. And over the years, I've coached high school football. I coach softball, coached high school football with my brother-in-law, coach softball now with my brother-in-law. And so I've done a little bit of everything over the years, and even threw in lacrosse for a couple of years there, like I mentioned earlier. So
it's a good segue into Steve. What about you? What got you started on officiating? As far as sorry.
Just again, back to helping kids, mentoring kids, teaching kids. Great exercise, love of the game. Again, played it in high school. Didn't play it in any college at all, but just continued to want to not only my own kids, but also younger kids in Babe Ruth baseball, and through organizations such as in Lombard Youth Sports and such. So always been something I've enjoyed, playing all those sports throughout the years, and just wanted to give my knowledge, and again, just the fun of the game to teach these young kids. There's so many great young athletes out there that do not get the leadership or mentoring from coaches, and it's just a great thing to continue to try to build these kids up and let them have a bright future ahead of them.
That's really cool. So, all three of you guys have refereed a lot. I have done it twice, volleyball. And you know what? I will be perfectly honest. I didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to face all the stuff that you guys get. So it's a different mentality, obviously, right? Coaches, generally, you're going to get, at least initially, you're going to get respect from the kids and stuff like that. And officials, it's like you almost start off on the opposite, right? So, I mean, what what attracted you to it, and did you ever think in the beginning of it that you were saying like, I don't know if I can do this, people yelling at me, or whatever. Just, I'm kind of curious. Maybe Bobby, you go first. Uh-oh. Do we hear Bobby?
Bobby,
you there?
Probably looks froze on mine, but I can answer that for you if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead, Steve. Yeah.
Back in the day, it was, not too bad. Parents were kind of leaving you alone, coaches leaving you alone. But as an official, you got to have some tough skin. You got to allow, a lot of the coaches are yelling, but they're not really yelling at the officials. They're just yelling because it's a nature of habit that they're trying to talk to their kids, and they may yell travel or, whatever it may be, and they're not really talking to the officials. So one, you got to kind of drown out that music. You got to drown out what the crowd's doing, and, just referee your game and don't listen to the parents, don't listen to the coaches, but you got to have thick skin. If you don't have thick skin, then you shouldn't be an official, because we're never going to make the right calls all the time. As you know, being a coach, you see different angles than what we're seeing on the court. The fans in the stands are higher up. They're seeing different angles. So it's truly a game of what we see down below versus what you as coaches see 60 feet from the play underneath the basket versus the parents that see it 25 feet up in the stands at the basket. So, but that's really it. We're there to mentor the kids. We try to explain to the younger coaches of what we saw, if they have a question, or why we called a foul, if they saw something different. For most part, 90% of the coaches are willing to learn and listen to what we have to say, but there's always a few that don't agree with our calls no matter what we call.
What about you, Bobby?
Yeah, the thick skin is the most important thing, and it does take a while to learn it, especially me being a younger referee when I started.
Yeah.
20, what was I, probably 23, 24 when I started. A savvy coach would try to push you around a little bit, try and take advantage of you, and you have to get that thick skin and just call your game and not worry about what's going on around you, and you have to be the coolest head when everyone in the gym is screaming their heads off. So it comes with experience, and you get to learn it over the years. I think throughout my career as a ref, I think overall it's not that it's easier, but the people are getting, for the most of the people are getting more polite. We're getting a lot more thank yous, a lot more pats on the back. But on the other end of the spectrum, the goofier coaches that'll make it hard on you are getting worse throughout the years. So good thing they're only about 5 to 10% of the people, and 90% of the people we come across are awesome. So I thought it's getting more and more enjoyable as the years are going on.
That's really cool. I would think it would be kind of almost the opposite on some level. Just with travel and the intensity of the sport seems to be.
I don't do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
I won't take. I do have an assigner that does assign a lot of the AAU stuff in the summer in the warehouses where they're playing 60 games a day, and I don't take that stuff because that is where I think sometimes you'll have a little bit more of a headache. I like the school settings more than anything else. The fans in the stands are sitting among their peers and their children's friends' parents and stuff. So the decorum's usually a lot better in most cases at settings like that than the travel scene and the summer scene. That can be a little bit rougher.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, being a former AAU basketball official, there were some days where you leave and you go, why am I doing this? Just because, like we all say, we have the intention of going there to teach and to make a difference, and you leave and you've basically been chewed out the whole day, and you're sweating and you almost wiped out on the floor because it's got poor circulation of air.
Yeah.
So I totally understand sticking with the school setting. I followed the same path in my later years of officiating. So guys, being that you are former coaches, and in Bobby, your case, you still do coach, how would you coach coaches on how to interact with an official? So let's set the scenario that a play has just happened on the floor and a coach is very frustrated about the play, whether they thought you made the wrong call or maybe it was a big moment in the game. How would you instruct a coach to interact with you, the official?
I always just want the coaches to, first of all, don't embarrass an official. don't show them up. I'm willing to answer any question a coach may have, and even admit that I'm wrong, which sometimes doesn't help in the moment. But I have said on occasion, I didn't have a good angle on that one, or I missed that one, or those kinds of things. As a coach, when I'm actually coaching, coaching softball now, we've had a few incidents where a couple of our fans are screaming at refs, and me and my brother-in-law, who I said has always coached with me, we don't stand for any of it. We tell the parents at the start of the season what we expect from them. The officials may as well not even be out there. We don't worry about that. We're not going to be that kind of team. We're not going to be those kind of fans that are going to worry about refs. They're out here trying to enjoy time with kids, enjoy games just like we do when we referee, and there's no reason to give those guys a hard time. So we actually, from coaching first base in softball last year, I remember one incident where I turned around and told a fan, knock it off, our own fan, knock it off, leave him alone, let him call his game. So I've never had any tolerance for that, when I'm actually a coach of the team, for the players, guys I've coached with, and for the fans.
What about you, Steve?
Yeah, same thing. I'll go over and talk to a coach and try to talk to him quietly and explain to him what I saw. But again, don't embarrass me. Don't try to show me up on the floor. I won't show you up on the floor. But, just be upfront and honest with them and let them know what you saw. And he may not agree with it. We're not going to always agree. Obviously, 99.999, we're not going to change the call. But, just try to explain to him and reason with them. But that doesn't always happen. Again, if he starts yelling, just walk away and, let him yell. And again, that's where we got to have that thick skin and just turn our backs and keep going up and down the floor. And it's going to happen. But one thing that the Murph and Sully show probably could do is Bobby and I talked about this a few weeks ago is, I would really love to see you two put on a coaches clinic and let officials be there or let them officiate and let them see how hard it is to see every call that they complain about and up and down the court. And, I get it. There are a lot of lazy officials, and I'm not afraid to admit that. You need to hustle. We're here to hustle, do our best job. But you could certainly teach coaches. You too could have a clinic for these coaches and teach them a lot of the things they don't know about. And one of the big things that they don't know about is the 3-point rule of over and back at the center court line. So I think if you guys would come up with something in your local schools, I think you could have two officials that are being there willing to step up and lead that brigade.
It's funny that you say that. Murph and I have actually had many conversations about this. Murph will be the first one to either during a game, he'll never be disrespectful towards the ref, but you could tell when he's getting fired up because the veins in his bald head pop out and his head starts turning red.
Yeah,
and he will, even after a game, be talking to me like, man, can you believe so-and-so? What were they seeing out there? And I've told him, if I were to have the time, and I know it's a cop-out, but I've always said that all coaches should referee a scrimmage before they start coaching.
Yeah.
Because until you've done it,
yeah,
you have no idea what we go through as officials.
It's funny you say that, Sully, because I think I told you this, but I was my current 8th graders that I coach. I had our 2 top players, and I was really encouraging them in 7th grade. Up until 7th grade, they really wouldn't do it too much, but to play against each other all the time, one-on-one, I said that's the way you guys can make yourself better. And they're different types of players, so I was like, you're gonna, one of them be more physical with the other to toughen her up, and the other one, use every move you can, be creative because she's fast and all that kind of stuff. And there was in our summer camp, we had one-on-one, right? Yeah, one-on-one, Sully, and we at the end of it, we're giving out prizes and all that kind of stuff. And the 2 girls made the finals, and they were competing against each other, and somehow either I got nominated or
no.
What was it? How did I get to be officiating?
It would have been just fine if the girls would have officiated themselves. You had you put yourself in that situation.
I think I did,
and you didn't have to.
All right, you know what? I'm going to go with that. Sully made me, but let's go with that anyway. But so I start officiating, and after like 3 calls, I was like, I could tell that the girls had no confidence in me whatsoever. And I feel like I was even making bad calls, 3 calls. And I was like, you know what, girls, I did step away, right? I did say,
thankfully for them and for everyone in attendance, you did step away.
And you know what? The other thing about that is that I was, at the time, I was thinking about officiating. Like I did a couple of volleyball games, as Sully knows, the previous season. And I was like, maybe I'll officiate, and that'll be great. And that quickly dispelled me of that notion. It just did.
Yeah, it's never good after a one-on-one tournament. Usually you have some tiers where the runner-up's in tears. It doesn't help when your other coaching partner is crying in the kitchen as well because he just made a mistake. That doesn't help the situation.
That's almost true.
So I think that's good advice that you guys gave to coaches. Yeah, I know I always try to tell coaches, referees wanted, like you said, Steve, and as Mike Pollock said, respect, RESPCT. They just want to be respected. And, our job is to have conversations. I know I'll have games where I'll say to a ref, hey, from where I was standing, I thought I saw this. What did I miss? And then they'll give me feedback back and say, well, this is what I saw. And, at the end of the day, their call is final. And I know what it is to be in their situation. So I back off. I do have 0 career technicals. I just want the record to show.
So do I.
You almost got one at the end of the season, Murph.
I know. You want to go ahead and tell him?
No, you tell him.
All right. So
this is good.
In our championship game, it's hard to do it, but I'll try. In our championship game, I'm known as the violator of the coach's box. I just am.
He's allergic to it.
We actually have one girl on the bench when she's on the bench, like, you watch Coach Murphy. He needs to be in the box, And during the championship game, I think the box was drawn weird. I'm just saying that. I'm putting it out there I'm pretty sure. But anyway, every time you went up and down the court, pretty much, you would go like this and grab me and pull me into the coach's box. Oh, it was a lot of fun, though.
But it is different because you're not used to teaching in a big, larger high school gym. So you're used to teaching in a smaller school. We get it.
Yeah.
We have to have that leniency, but we also trying to pull you back and rein you in and put you back in your coach's box.
Literally.
But we wanted to tee up for it, but we didn't.
We have a little banter about that, so which is fun.
A lot of situations for the folks at home where Murph could get a technical, but people just see that face and they go, you know what, not this time. Bobby and Steve, in the last couple of years, have you encountered a lot of unruly spectators? And as an official, what do you do when you run into those situations where you have spectators that are just being unruly or being disrespectful? How do you handle those situations?
Well, our rule of thumb is that, we as officials, we should know who's in charge of the gym while we're officiating the game. So generally, we wouldn't have to even deal with the unruly fan one-on-one. But, with every gym you go into, sometimes you get a great gym monitor and sometimes there isn't even one there, and it's up to you. It's never easy. It's a situation that can deteriorate very easily because a fan that's being unruly oftentimes is not going to realize if you have to throw them out that they really should just leave quietly. And it's never easy. Luckily, in my recent years, every time that's come up, there's been a good gym monitor that's taking care of it, and I really haven't had to engage one-on-one more than a couple times that I can remember.
Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. It's at the lower levels, it's great gym monitors, but you get to the high school levels and any freshman, sophomore, JV, or varsity, it could get out of hand pretty quick. But you got to bring the coaches together and at the timeout and say, hey, whoever's fans these are, the announcement needs to be made. But it is getting worse in high school than it is at the lower level. It's a lot worse now than it's ever been, but I think it's still controllable that we have not had to, escort anybody out of the gym or have them leave. It's just, you got to let the gym monitor know or whoever's handling that facility to quiet that crowd and respect it. And a lot of schools, along with lower level schools, are starting to have a something read at the beginning of the game to, you're here to cheer on your kids, or you're here to respect the other team, and you cheer for your kids, respect the other team, and respect the officials also. So that's starting to be put into place in more schools across Chicagoland area.
I was going to say, I tried that before a playoff game. I think, Bobby, you were even officiating. I read the league sportsmanship statement before the game, and there were 4 technicals, and I'm like, I'm never reading this thing again.
No. And that was playoffs too. Playoffs, for some reason, just gives everyone license to act a fool. I don't know why it happens, but the same sweetheart teams you see all season with the nicest fans, around, that, all of a sudden the loser gets eliminated and everyone's going crazy. I do remember that night you're talking about.
Now, I do know from an athletic administrator perspective, I'm going to start, I normally send out multiple reminders to my fan bases about sportsmanship. But I know next year with my schools, we're going to be having preseason parent meetings, and you guys will probably be getting a phone call from me because I want to bring in a ref or two to talk to the parents to kind of like we're doing here. I want them to get your perspective, so that way during the game, when they're yelling "Hands, Steve, hands," they remember that, hey, Steve's just a normal guy who's taken his time to officiate for my kid, and I got to show him respect. But I know I'm taking things. I also have sportsmanship banners in the gym about let the players play, let the coaches coach, let the officials officiate. Our good friend Mike Pollock even reminded me we have a sign in our one gym. These are kids. This is a game. The coaches are volunteers. The referees are human, and this is not the NBA. And I think any sort of reminder, either auditorily or visually, is good for for parents to be reminded of why we're here and to show you guys respect.
I think that would be excellent. You break down that fourth wall that, the parents know the coaches, they know the players in the game. Of course, it's their darling children that are out there running around that can do no wrong. If you got to know the referee story a little bit too, that would maybe make us a little bit more human in their eyes. And maybe instead of yelling or, approaching you after the game, which is rare, but it happens occasionally, then they'd maybe, realize that, like I said, you're human too. So yeah. I particularly remember one last year, not this past season, but the season before. If you guys remember, we had a very, very snowy Friday that made traveling terrible to get to any of the games. Mm-hmm. Well, I had not to tell a, pity party story, but I had worked 10 hours at my job, hustled home to get my stuff, and then headed out in the snow to get to a school about 15 miles away. I was late by about a quarter of the game. And, it's in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm making a great effort here. I'm going to get here. I'm going to find a way to get this done. It's going to be a long day. But within 3 or 4 minutes, there's people yelling, and it's unbelievable. Like, I guess, I don't know. It just, that day stands out to me because, I don't remember if the fans were particularly bad or worse than usual, but I kind of felt like I deserved a break that night a little bit if I had missed a call or two, and I definitely wasn't getting it.
And you have no forum to say, hey, listen, I worked 10 hours today.
Yeah.
I busted my butt to get here through the snow.
Yeah.
And I'm here. I'm trying. Give me a break. Yeah.
Well, one thing I will say is, and we talked about when we're talking to coaches and what we saw, and, we'll go up to the coach and said, hey, just to let you know, this person's jumping over the line, or this person's in the lane too quick, or whatever, or even to teach the kids, hey, why I called this foul or what I saw. And I got to be honest with you, a lot of the coaches are actually thanking the officials now for teaching the kids on the floor. Yeah. And again, back to mentoring these kids. So a lot of the coaches are very thankful for what we do. So it's not only coaches yelling at us, but they're also thanking us for teaching these kids. And that's really what it's about, is continuing to teach these kids. Right. And again, to build them up, to get them to that next level, if it's high school or to college level. Even at the high school level, we're still teaching them how to enter the lane, why we called a block or a charge, why we called, not straight up and down, or, we don't call it over the back, but a push. So the coaches are still very appreciative of that, and it's not just bashing on coaches, but it's continuing to mentor these coaches as well as the children.
Did you guys ever see? I don't remember when I was a kid seeing officials do that. I have to say I agree with you. I'm really impressed when I see officials, doing something with a kid, like walking them through something or telling them something. So, why did you guys start doing that, or did you see somebody else doing that, or?
I recall one official from my youth doing it, a fellow by the name of Joe, and he ended up being my assigner. He was a grandfatherly guy. He had a real quiet demeanor, and in the hustle and bustle of a fast-paced game, if there was something that he felt he could impart to a player, he would always tell him. And I think learning from him, and then also being a coach myself, it's one of my favorite things when I see an illegal screen and I can grab the kid and let him know, don't stick your hip out, or your feet got to be shoulder width apart. It's one of my favorite parts of officiating, is when I get to do a little coaching as well as officiating, and teach the kids what they're maybe what they did incorrectly on a play. And sometimes we do come across mostly great coaches, but sometimes it's just a parent that got tossed into the role because there was no one else willing to volunteer, and maybe the parent/coach doesn't realize what constitutes an illegal screen, or why something is 3 seconds and maybe why it isn't, depending on when shots go up and whatnot. So I definitely like to coach as I'm officiating. It's my favorite part of officiating.
That's very cool. So let's bring up a little bit of a actually, if I remember the second one, I have my pen next to me. The two controversial things that I think that are controversial is you're in the beginning of a game, or you get a couple quarters into a game, and you feel like you've made you feel like you've made a couple of mistakes on some level, and maybe you're not getting a hard time about it. Maybe you are, whatever. But do you officiate differently based on the fact that maybe, let's just say, you made a few mistakes that favored one team over another, in your mind? Like, forget about the coaches, just in your mind. The big word is makeup call, right? And anyway. But what thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
No, I don't go back to that go at all. I messed that up. I mean, I live with it, move on, and you can't go back to a play. That play's over. You got to move ahead and continue to, there's always days that we have bad days, or we're not going to see everything, but you just move along, and you don't show that true color. You don't show one-sided or another. The biggest thing that we hear from coaches is, oh, look at the fouls on the board. It's 6-0 or 7-1, and then, okay, next thing you look up on the board and it's 7 fouls to 7 fouls. So you can't change that behavior. You can't change that mentality of thinking. You got to continue to ref your game the way you ref it, and again, continue to hustle. And one play you can walk out as, was that probably a block or a charge? Block and charges can go any which way, 50-50 half of the time, and I think Bobby will agree. It's where we see the body go, left or right, or was the person already leaning back, or doing a flop where it's truly a block. And but yeah, you can't let that bother you. You got to move on to the next play.
Yeah. What about you, Bobby?
Yeah, for me, officiating, I think it would be too hard to be thinking about makeup calls. I definitely, maybe as much as many officials, carry the bad calls with me. And Steve, having ref with me, can attest to, we'll meet each other after a quarter or at halftime, and the first thing I say is, I screwed up that block charge, and he, as a good partner that he always is, he'll tell me, no, I saw it the way you saw it, you were fine. But to then think about a makeup call, the officiating, especially for guys that have been doing it as long as us, we're not really thinking out there. It's all react. It's all what you see. It's just to put in a call for that kind of thing would be too hard, and you'd end up probably making it way worse than the first initial call that you're trying to make up for was. So
that's interesting, because you just hit on what we kind of talk about with players is, and I coach the players a lot, is to say, we practice a lot more than we play, and you do something over and over again so that when you get into the game, you're not thinking. You're not actually thinking. You're doing. You're reacting. And that's kind of cool to hear that you guys are doing basically the same thing. You just, in the moment, you're making the call, and that's cool.
And as I mentioned about refereeing lacrosse earlier, that's where there was a lot of thinking involved because I had never played. I actually didn't know the sport very well. And basketball referees tend to be good lacrosse officials because a lot of the mechanics are the same, but I didn't know the sport. So after playing basketball my whole life and then, getting thrust into officiating it, a travel, a backcourt violation, you don't have to think. And in lacrosse, I was out there the entire time like, all right, what is that something that they can't do? I had to. There was too much thinking involved. It was difficult.
Yeah. So I don't want to hog the.
Keep going, Murph. You're on a roll, baby.
All right, I got one more.
You're on a roll, baby.
I can think of, and it'll probably be more. One of the biggest problems I have, and by the way, you guys are the exception. Maybe I'm just saying that to kiss up, but for next season, exactly. No, all right, one time he had me on the show.
You have to set out the next podcast.
Exactly. I had this situation once I can remember where one of our best players was fouled hard in the first quarter. And it was by a girl that you could tell that either she had never played before, or her coach was not teaching her right or something. But she just basically shoved our best player, and the guy didn't call a foul. And I was upset that he didn't call a foul, and I let him know it. But because my biggest thing is when a kid's going to get hurt, I'm looking out probably more for my kids on some level. But honestly, when I'm on the court and if my kid's going to hurt somebody, and we've had some kids that are, overly physical and stuff like that. So, and I tell the officials, I don't mind you making that call. But in this situation, that first call happened. The official didn't call it. Nothing happened. And then we get to the third and the fourth quarter, and it starts getting, the play gets worse overall. And then the same girl on towards the end of the game, same girl on both ends of it has a breakaway, and she just gets shoved, completely shoved. And I lost it. I actually went onto the court because I thought my player was hurt, and the ref still didn't call. I don't think he called anything. And I was just like, okay, somebody just got hurt because you lost control of the game. That's at least that's how I saw it. So is there any thought to, the call on the game a certain way in the beginning, or especially like a high school rivalry or something, it's really tight, or it's going to be emotional, so you want to call it early so it doesn't get to that way. Any thoughts on that situation, or Murph, just shut up, you're crazy and you don't know what you're talking about? But that's true too.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Bobby, go ahead.
It's you have to kind of see if, like you say, if it's a person that or a player that isn't maybe very skilled and doesn't really know what they're doing. That's a little bit harder. Not that I wouldn't call a foul, but if it's a stud player out there playing hard, aggressive defense and going over the line, you and your partner invariably are going to meet up and say, all right, we got to tighten up the whistles here. These two teams are really getting at it. And then I find if there was ever the benefit of a doubt on maybe something that would be an intentional foul, if you call that early, that usually will calm everybody down, especially that person that's playing super aggressive defense. Now, it's funny that not funny, but it's ironic that you bring up a player that maybe isn't very skilled, because I ran into that same situation late in this season. We had a team losing, giving fouls at the end of the game, and whenever it's an obvious situation for that and they're coming out of the timeouts, I like to walk over near the bench of the team that's going to give the fouls and tell them, don't push, guys, just hold somebody. We don't want anyone to get hurt. Well, on this particular night, a kid was elbowing up near the head of the ball handler. Did it once and kind of missed, caught a shoulder. My partner had an intentional foul, so we had 2 free throws in the ball. Now, the game's out of hand by now, but the team is still fouling. And the next foul, he did catch the kid that he was trying to foul in the head. Now, I mean, we could come in with the big X and eject or technical fouls or whatever, but in the playoffs, it was just going to make it a hotter situation. I was near the coach of the team at the time, and he said – he was kind of beside himself. He kind of felt bad for what was happening. He said he doesn't understand how to just hold. He doesn't understand how to just give a foul. And I said, why don't we take him out of the game? It's a 12-point spread now, and let's try and cool this gym off. And he did. I was thankful for that. We shot a couple more free throws, and we got out of there without incident. But it is every situation is unique. It's not. Those are the hard situations.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. As Bobby said, it's tough with the non-skilled players or the uncoordinated players. We even see it in the high school at the higher levels that, we still have kids that are not skilled perfectly. But, in my profession, I always walk over to a coach and they say, you're losing control of the game, or you got my player injured. And I say, in my profession, nobody is getting hurt under my watch. It's a little different for me where, a lot of the officials just walk away from the players, but due to my license, I have to attend and, I could lose my license for not helping these kids to make sure they're not injured unless somebody there is a higher level skilled than I am. But, you just got to approach the coach. And as Bobby said, you go over to the bench or at half court, hey, kids, you got to go for the ball. We're not pushing. You have to go for the ball or you are going to get that big X that Bobby talked about. But again, at the higher level of high school, that's why you have these team meetings at the 5 minutes before the game starts of sportsmanship. We're talking about sportsmanship. White talks to white, red talks to red. And then right away, how the game's going to start. And both officials or three officials at the high school level, they're going to either let it be loose and let the kids play for the first quarter and see how it goes, or they're going to start right off the bat and we're going to have a tight game and we're going to be in the bonus in the first quarter. And, that way it tells the fans, it tells the coaches we're being consistent and we're going to call the game the same way throughout the 4 quarters.
That brings up an interesting question. If you've officiated a team before and that they're kind of prone to foul trouble or other things like that, is there ever a conversation with a coach about that kind of beforehand or a thought that you have going into the game, knowing that they're probably going to be in some foul trouble? You don't want to lose control of the game, but you also don't want to some extent, affect the outcome of the game by calling a lot of foul. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Maybe Bobby first.
I never really have had that kind of a talk with a coach before the game. The pregame talks are usually boilerplate if you even have them. Just standard stuff. I can't recall a team that I went into a game thinking these guys are going to be in the bonus and within the first quarter. I can't think of a situation like that. There are situations where, as Steve referred to earlier, 7 fouls to 0 or something, and you're starting to hear from one side. But a lot of times those make perfect sense for why they're happening. Hey, coach, you guys are settling for 3-pointers, and on the other side, they're driving to the basket every time, and you guys are whacking them. So situations like that will come up during play sometimes, but I can't recall thinking before a game like, ooh, this team really gets out there and hacks. I should say something to the coach. Not off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. That never happens because, in high school, I've maybe repped the same teams numerous times at different venues, but basically you can't go in with that mindset because you may have had a team 2 weeks ago that comes out and plays a totally different defense or totally different school, and they may not be in that foul mindset. So to start that off with the coaches right away is probably not a good thing for the officials.
Yeah.
Guys, what's the funniest thing you've ever had an athlete or a coach say to you?
Hands, Steve, hands. I hear it all the time.
I was just trying to verbalize that I thought that there was a lot of hand checking going on. I said it in a friendly manner.
You did many times, but very friendly.
Does it lose its friendliness even though he's saying it friendly?
Little louder than normal, but the whole gym could hear it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
For my defense, it wasn't a field house. It echoes really bad in there.
But there's got to be something. I mean, I hear so many gems out of kids in particular. Or maybe the question is, if you can't think of one of those, what about like the worst behavior you've seen by let's say a coach, because I've seen some stuff. We've talked about it a little bit on the show, but
I'll give you I can't think of anything right off the top of my head about that, but the worst I've seen, coach arguing about a call, kind of what you said before about his female player being hurt.
yeah.
And so he got teed up, and he kept on going, and he got teed up again, was ejected, and pulled one of the Bobby Knights and threw a chair up into the bleachers. And obviously I will not say where or what school that took place in, but that is probably the worst I've seen. The second worst I've seen is in an AAU basketball.
Good thing I'm sitting down.
Two fourth grade girls teams. And again, the guy, coach didn't like how his player got treated, so he was yelling at my partner, where a fight literally broke out in the stands. And then the two parents in the stands came onto the gym floor, and both officials called it over. So those are probably the two worst case scenarios I've seen in all my time of officiating.
All right, 2 questions.
I won't tell you where, and I won't tell you when.
No. We observed that rule.
No, right.
Did he throw it into the stands with people there?
No, he threw it into where there was only one set of stands, kind of like at the championship, how it's set up at the championships.
Yeah.
Where there was nobody on the other side of the gym, and the benches were over on the opposite side with no bleachers out, and he threw it up into the bleachers.
Wow.
Over the railing, like into the second floor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I forget my other question, but
So
Bobby,
never been truly so scared where we had to have a police escort out of that building in my officiating. But yeah, threw it up in the upper balcony, as my wife is texting me and telling me.
So it was a pretty good toss.
It was a great toss. Yes,
Yeah,
he would have probably won the discus long shot, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, 4th grade. That's the other one. Oh,
And I'm sure if the game would have continued, you would have given him a great toss as well.
You got it. You got it. You're gone.
Yeah. Bobby, how about you?
On the bad side, only one really stands out, and thankfully it was more directed at my partner than me. But this is a number of years ago now, probably 15 years ago. Same situation that Steve started with, technical, then another technical shortly thereafter. And, by then, any ejections I've ever had, the ejected party is long gone. You don't see him after the game. But on this particular night, this coach is outside in the parking lot rolling up his shirt sleeves as my partner and I are coming outside. And the athletic director at the time at that school had a feeling something like that might happen. I guess this was a notorious hothead coach. So it was diffused pretty quickly. But just even the thought of him, I'm waiting outside for the ref and we're going to fight. I mean, that is just completely ridiculous. Yeah. In the gym, I've never seen a chair toss like that. Luckily, in recent memory and off the top of my head, I can't recall much that has gone beyond a technical or even a double technical. But nothing crazy behavior-wise.
So, Ed, can you make a note for next year when Bobby's reffing a game that give me a chair? Give me the It's
no.
coming, Bobby.
No.
I'll throw it.
Oh, I will.
And I can tell you, Bobby and I are two people that have strong skin, and we let a lot of this roll off our back. And I think, I can't say how many games I did this year, but I think I've given 2 technicals all year. And both at high school level for swearing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was going to say, when I reffed, I didn't give out many technicals either, but usually it was for swearing. I mean, when I was 18 and I was reffing rec league ball, I remember one time it was a 5th grade game and a coach is literally cussing his kids out. And, I go to the coach to go, hey, coach, these guys are 5th graders. Could you please watch your language? And he responded with, well, what does it matter to you? How old are you anyways? And I go, I'm this old. Sit down.
Now sit down.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's another great point you bring up, Sully, that a lot of coaches, even at high school level, I hate to say it, you give them a technical, they don't know that they have to sit down.
Correct.
And I had a bad high school game this year where the coach didn't know, so her assistant stood up. And I said, oh, no, you don't get to sit up just because. And then the fans in the stands saying, just ref the game. And I said the magic word to her. I said, you have lost your right to stand up.
Yep.
So now you have to sit. Coaches don't even know that. If you get a technical, you have to sit the rest of the game. So again, not only at the lower level, but at the higher level, they don't understand that you get teed up, you're down on that chair or bench the rest of the game.
You know what? I didn't know that until like 2 years ago. I did not know that because I've never gotten teed.
I blame the athletic director.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a teaching moment there.
There's your second one tonight. Yeah. You're gone.
I just removed it from the stream. Sorry.
There you go. Blow. Give it to him.
Let's see here. So, we got some people texting in some different questions, variety of topics. One person, my father, has a question for you all. Oh no, that's a statement. Murph's covering up his bald head with a hat. No. Oh, there it is. Have you guys noticed any differences in having to officiate the game now with the concussion rules as they are set up? Do you look at the game in a different scope maybe than you did previously, or does that not even affect your officiating?
I probably should look at it differently. But honestly, I don't know that I do. I should probably be better at that. It definitely changed the way I coached football because that really, I haven't coached in 4 years now, but our last few years there, that definitely changed the way the coaching went as far as that was concerned. I do remember this year a kid hitting his head and he popped right up. He looked fine. His eyes looked fine. And I almost felt inadequate walking over to him like, all right, let me look at you. Let me kind of examine you here and make sure you're okay. But I honestly, probably didn't really know what I should be looking for and probably didn't have the answer to any questions the coaches might have had unless the kid really looked foggy. If it was subtle, I don't know that I would have noticed anyway.
No, I don't think there's any difference there. Obviously in my profession, again, I've been around it for 33 years doing it. So, making sure, no blurriness, no dizziness, nothing like that. You're looking for pinpoint pupils, but if they can tell you, hey, I didn't hit my head or whatever, it's pretty much, unless we should for sure see or heard them hit their head, hey, coach, give us a sub. But in high school level, they got the trainers that take over medically for us, and we don't have to do that. But in the lower level, it's truly on us because I still think the officials have a better demeanor than some of the coaches, and they really look to us to say yes or no. I mean, we're always looking out for the kids, and you don't want to have anything happen to these poor kids. But, having medical ice packs on standby or real ice is great, as I know as our athletic director here on this podcast always has good supplies.
That's right.
Always the best. I have the best ice packs.
You do have good ice packs. One thing I think it's important for anybody listening to this, kids as well, is that I only learned a few years ago through concussion protocol that we do at the school. Thanks, Ed. For that you don't have to be hit in the head to get a concussion. You can get hit in the chest and your head snaps and that moves your brain. So to me, that was really eye opening. And so kids, one other thing I'll say too, is years ago, my daughter got a concussion in practice. And as I was like tending to her and ready to take her to the hospital before I left, one of the girls said, it's okay. It's okay, Maeve. You're tough. You can do it, right? And I turned to the girl, and then I said to all the girls, I said, listen, this is not a question of being tough. This is what somebody's hurt, especially with a concussion. We have to take this protocol. So please understand, and that kind of thing. So I just thought that was an important thing to share. That I think most adults don't know that you don't have to get hit in the head to get a concussion.
Good point, Dr. Murphy.
I brought this down, man. Sorry.
Oh boy. One of our listeners, actually a fellow official and coach and friend, John Corcoran, says future topic: officials that coach how being an official impacts your coaching and teaching the game. I think we've seen here that, because you guys have previously coached, that affects how you officiate the game, because not only are you looking at it from an official's perspective, you're looking at it from a coach's perspective. And I know Bobby, Steve, myself, vice versa. When I'm coaching a game, I look at it not just from a coach's perspective, but from the official's perspective as well. So, thank you, John, for jumping in there. Let's see here. Oh, we have a topic request, a new segment. Ask Och. I don't know if we can do
that. What? Ask Och to hustle more? He's one of the officials that we all know.
Hey, we said we weren't going to bring up specific names. We also thank Ryan Crabtree, who said, "This is my first time watching YouTube Live. Great content, great dialogue, and good discussion." Oh, and that logo is BA, which once again, this is a family show, but thank you to Ryan and US Safety Products. They designed the logo for Murph and Sully's Youth Athletics podcast, so we appreciate that. Guys. So we got a few more minutes here, Bobby and Steve. Murph and I are going to wrap up our final questions. I guess one question I have for you is, since you guys have a certain philosophy and how you ref, how do you interact with officials that have a completely opposite philosophy? How do you interact and work with and collaborate with the refs that are just there for the money or just want to get in and get out as quickly as possible? And how do you work with those individuals?
It's not easy, and it's a big pet peeve of mine. Sometimes you can tell when your partner comes into the gym with a chip on his shoulder, or is just there for the money, just wants to get going. A big indicator for me is, how much time they want put up for halftime. I want the kids to be able to rest and the coaches to be able to coach. And I know how important that was to me when I was coaching. So halftime, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, it's fine with me. We're not going anywhere. We're fine. 2 minutes. Let's go. Come on, let's go. And we do encounter some partners like that. And, it comes in every profession, I'm sure. So it's not easy. I had a couple situations. I had a couple, partners that I wasn't too fond of this year. And they made working the games with them more difficult. But you do the best you can, and, you focus on your calls and that you can only represent yourself while you're out there. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very tough situation, and like Bobby said, you can tell when they're walking in 2 minutes before to put their shoes and shirt on, and all right, let's go, and no time for halftime. You look at your partners and you just shake your head, going, "Oh, this is going to be a long afternoon or a long night," and it's unfortunate, but some of us are in it for the love of the game, the love of the kids. Teaching, again, as we said, we're not in it for the money. We're in it to teach and make these kids better athletes to move on with their careers. Some of them will never see that career. Some of them never really see high school. But at the lower levels, we're here to teach and mentor. And unfortunately, there are people out there just for the money. And after the money, they don't care what they taught the kids or the coaches. But I think Bobby and I and numerous officials out there are in it for the teaching and mentoring.
I think that's the hard thing is, parents – unfortunately, it's just like any other team. You and your partner are looked at as a team. So if your partner is calling the game a certain way, or they're having a certain demeanor with the athletes or the coaches or the spectators, unfortunately, you get dragged into that, even if you're doing things the way you normally do it. I remember once I was reffing a high school game, and my partner is right when hand checking became a big thing, the hot stove hand check, and exactly. And I remember because the IHSA was like, "You just got to call it quick right away." And I had a very old school partner who'd been repping for 25 years. And I kid you not, we were in the double bonus in the first quarter. And and people are booing us. And the coach is like, "Can you explain to me, son, why he's called, close to 16 fouls and you've only called 4? No,
because he stinks and I don't.
I got nothing. So you guys really do go through, having to deal with that, and I don't think a lot of parents realize that is even if you're having, an all-star day, your partner can very quickly bring you down.
I had an incident last year where I had a partner, kind of had a chip on his shoulder, a gentleman that I had never met before. And we were working our first game together. And he tells me after probably the first quarter, this kid that's driving to the basket, he's talking all the time. I'm going to get him. And I'm just thinking like, okay, well, what's going to happen here? So sure enough, the kid he's talking about drives in, makes a layup, says something playgroundish like "and one." This partner of mine calls a technical on the kid for saying "and one," waves off the basket. We're shooting technicals on the other side. So we get into the locker room at halftime, and he's like, I got him. I'm like, you're killing me, man. You brought the temperature in this gym up 20 degrees for no reason. You shouldn't even hear that stuff or worry about that stuff. So, and like you said, everybody in the stands in the gym assumes that we've been partners for 20 years and we're best friends and we rode to the game together. And there's sometimes that, you roll your eyes a little bit, but you just do the best you can.
Do you ever say something to a coach? If it's just going, maybe it's just so bad that you can't help yourself.
Generally, I don't like to, and I actually got accused of not defending my partner this year in a situation. I was told you threw me under the bus, and I didn't do that, that kind of aggravated me. But generally I try not to do that to a coach, and it would be more of a different perspective. He's over there, coach. I can't see what he sees. You can't see what he sees. That kind of a thing. I wouldn't admit to a coach that I don't agree with that call or anything like that. That's the hard part, that your partner calls a technical for a kid saying "and one" under his breath, and you kind of have to defend it.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, Bobby, is a lot of the coaches and a lot of the parents don't understand the floor of what we're watching, what the trailer the lead person has. They don't understand what the guy on the baseline is seeing on the floor. So, we have that zone on the floor. We're covering an area. Well, didn't you see that guy get pushed? No, I don't watch down in that right corner. That's not my area. So it's another thing that the fans and the coaches don't truly understand.
Yeah, and I used to have a bad habit as a young official of saying, just like you said now, with a little bit less tact, "Oh, I'm not looking at that." And that's not taken the right way in the middle of a hotly contested game. And it's better to just agree, and I'll look for it next time, coach. But like you said, they don't understand where our eyes are and what we're supposed to be focused on, in relation to our partner.
Right. Yeah.
Murph, I've got one last question. Do you have anything for the boys before we let them go?
You guys, you go ahead, and then I have one question too. Go ahead.
Guys, the average age of an IHSA basketball official, I believe, is close to the high 40s, low 50s. How do you guys, I know I'm throwing this on the spot, do you have any recommendations on how to change that and maybe get more guys? Bobby, like yourself and I, Steve, we're not saying you're old, but like I started when I was in college. How do we get those individuals started younger?
I don't know. That's difficult. It's I mean, like where I coach softball, they let the high school kids umpire the instructional games. So maybe that kind of instills a little bit of that and gets that fire burning with kids when they're a little bit younger. I started when I was 23, but I was kind of dragged into it a little bit by, like I said, by an assistant coach of mine. And you're right. I still feel like one of the youngest refs, and I'm 44 years old. I very rarely am with a partner who's 22, 23. You just don't see it very much at all. It's almost that, it stands out now when there's a young kid in the gym trying to officiate. There is one out here by us that, played in the conference that we're all associated with, and he's going to be very good, but there aren't many like him.
Yeah, it's tough, and as you've all heard, there's a shortage of officials in every sport through IHSA across, Illinois and other states, and unfortunately, it's because of the way we are treated. Truly, the way we are treated by coaches, other officials, the fans, where the dollars are not worth the aggravation or the threats from parents or coaches. So I'm not sure there's a way to get the younger youth involved. There's many clinics out there. There's a lot of great young officials, but we still have a lot of old officials or elder officials that are still doing it because that's the generation that it's been for the last 30, 40 years. So, Sully, I think your answer last I heard was the average age of IHSA officials is 52 years of age, and I'm under that mark. So,
and if I could also just mention, I think it should be on some assigners to find some young kids that are interested, or when they're contacted by young refs, let them work their way in slowly. I know of 2 conferences where, everyone says the running joke about the conference is the youngest refs are 70 years old in that league, and the assigners just stick to their guys. And granted, when guys are retired, maybe the income's a little bit more important to them to get some basketball games than it would be to a person that works full time. But it's like I said, it's very difficult to break in as a young official that the assigner doesn't know.
And I was going to say, as an assigner myself, I know you try to get more and more younger officials if you can. I try to set up in situations that I know they'll be successful, right? So 4th grade, maybe 5th grade, and I'm putting them with a partner like yourselves that likes to teach, because it's not going to do a young ref justice if I put them with a partner that's just there for the money. Even though I don't have any guys that are like that, but you know what I'm saying? You try to put them in a position to be successful.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm kind of surprised the IHSA doesn't do more partnerships with colleges and universities and the junior colleges. I feel like they should have a division specifically to work with those individuals, especially kids are trying to, find a way to pay off school. Like, it's a good way to give back to the game. And, it's just my opinion.
No, it's true. And the younger you get them, the better chance you have of getting them, But it's pretty rare that somebody's 40, 50 years old and says, I want to officiate, per se, I think, right? I mean, if you're the first time I did anything, I was an umpire, which I actually loved in baseball for a couple of years.
He was like Leslie Nielsen in The Naked Gun. Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved it. I almost tossed a family friend's dad out, which was pretty cool. But I have a very serious question for you guys. Okay. How do you deal with coaches like Sully and me, who, when you guys miss a call and we tell you about it, and we don't want to embarrass you, but we tell you about it? How do you deal with perfect coaches like us? How do you do that? What's the secret?
You ain't gonna hear a reply out of either of us on that.
That's seriously the last question you had, Murph? Yeah. Mother of God. We got a fan question. This is for the chief, Ryan Crabtree, that runs U.S. Safety Products, that does apparel for firefighting organizations. Is it easier to be a fire chief or a referee, Steve?
And I know Ryan very well. It is easier to be a referee than a fire chief. Any day of the week, especially what's going on in our world right now with our friendly coronavirus.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Bobby, Steve, do you have anything you want to say to the audience before we sign off here?
To the audience, no. I just want to thank you guys for having me and in valuing my perspective in this on this topic. And it was awesome. I was looking forward to it since you invited me to be on.
Awesome.
Yes, I agree. It was an honor to be invited to be part of this great youth athletics podcast with the two of you. I've watched every one of them and enjoyed every one of them. And I continue to wish you guys success, and anywhere we can join in again or help you, we're always here for you guys. You know that.
We greatly appreciate it.
Next time we'll have an angry fan come on. It'll be fun. We won't do that. I did some angry coaches, by the way.
Oh boy. Well, our next show will be actually about the role of parents in youth athletics. So for the chief, Bobby, Murph, I'm Sully. Thank you for viewing Murph and Sully's Youth Athletics Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Woohoo. Okay, bro.